The assassination on Suzanne Lee was a bust, so Luther decides to bring Suzanne back to Senator Black's home, which is really one of and probably the dumbest idea he could have come up with, especially since Senator Black hired Luther to cover up his tracks after the mistrial. Now he has Suzanne's DNA all over his house, and he doesn't have time to deal with all of this or the ramifications, given he has 4 days until his press conference, which to him is the biggest day of his life. Luther then offers to take care of it, but for a price of $100,000. Senator says he will make it too if he gets rid of his other problem, Mia Thompson. The senator had kidnapped Mia Thompson all along and hands her over to Luther to take care of things. Flashback to 1900 years ago to the death of Simon Peter by the Roman Empire on an upside-down cross, with a quote of John 21 verse 18, which says, "When you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." Now this part, I'll give my thoughts on it in the theological basis section of the review, because as Peter's final words were, "I wish we had just a bit more time," 3 days in the tomb of Joseph the Arimathean, the same place where the king conquered death itself, a miracle happens. Peter is brought back to life and is greeted by John. Yes, that John the Baptist, who was beheaded, who explains that the same miracle was done to him when his disciples brought him to the tomb. Peter then asks if the tomb gave him a second birth, and John responds a third birth. Peter then wonders about the others, to which John states not yet, to which Peter responds there will be. This is only the beginning. Cutting back to the present day, at Kingdom HQ number 2, Peter announces to the Council of Prophets that Wes is dead, and wonders what is their backup plan, especially since he was their supposed chosen one for the task. The new plan is to use the slab of stone, which Peter states has not worked in centuries, wondering why they even bothered to bring it to America. But the prophets tell him that they must try, as it is their only hope, especially with the fact that Satan is going to unleash his plan in 4 days. Peter wonders if they have a plan B, and one of the prophets state they do, refer to plan A. Peter then leaves the room telling them they win, he'll slap the kid on the stone. If he doesn't wake up in 3 days, I'm going back to fishing. 3 days later, at the northern tip of Driver City, a miracle happens. Wes is brought back to life, and the folks at the HQ rejoice, with Peter going on to explain to Wes everything that has happened since he was gone and how they brought him back, but warning him that if he dies again, he's a goner for good. Wes then checks out what the folks in the Kingdom HQ have been up to, where Troy for the past couple of weeks have been trying to test the science behind what David did to Goliath, feeling discouraged that he can't seem to get it right. And Wes tells him, "That's what they tell me. Listen, don't let an expensive calculator get you down. Remember, David didn't slay Goliath on his own. It was the strength of his faith, not the strength of his body, that killed the giant, right?" To which Troy thanks him for the advice, leading to a little banter between Wes and Peter. Later that day, Wes goes on patrol in downtown Driver City, going through the police database to see what he can dig up about Luther, as well as scanning for demonic activity with the Alpha suit, stating it feels like a spider sense. Wes eventually spots Luther in a rush leaving the police station and decides to confront him in his full Alpha suit. Luther does make fun of him in the suit, telling him that he doesn't know the way to the costume contest, and if he needs any help, he can look for someone in the police station. Wes ignores him and scans the area for the parking garage and picks up a bomb. Throwing Luther to the ground and ripping the trunk of the police car off, he finds both Mia Thompson and Suzanne Lee tied up with a bunch of explosives. Picking up the woman and running as far away with them, telling Luther to run also, he just sits there stating he's so dead like meat, with the bomb blowing up, killing him and blowing up the police station. He then radios back to HQ that he wants to run in and see if there's any survivors, but HQ tells him to keep the women safe as they are important to Satan's plan, with a quote of Proverbs 12 verse 15, which says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice." Meanwhile, in Senator Black's uptown office, the senator is paid a visit by his son, and the conversation isn't one bit at all a good one. Rick Jr. promises that both him and his crew will stay out of trouble, and has been out of trouble for the past month since his dad has his big press conference coming up. But his dad states how much he hates him and that stupid bird he carries around, stating that if it wasn't for the promise he made to his mother on her deathbed, he would have made him an orphan a long time ago. To which Rick Jr. responds he should have saved that speech for the Father of the Year banquet, telling him that if it wasn't for the deal he made when he was born, he would have never won the first election, threatening to expose his father's deep dark secret. What would the media think if they knew Senator Black worships the red guy with the horns and the ponytail? He'll get laughed out of office. But the senator gets heated and justifies why he does what he does and is thankful for the deal he has gotten from the devil. Even though he never met him, which Rick Jr. continues to mock him for trusting in someone or something he never met, it is evident that it is all worth it, especially with the power and money he has been gifted with, and once everything goes according to plan after tomorrow, he will be on track to be the second most powerful man in the world, stating that he will meet him tomorrow and drop to his knees and kiss his feet, then stand next to him as he rules the world. Back at the Kingdom HQ, Wes is going through all the files of the case at hand, trying to connect the dots. How does Senator Black, Suzanne Lee, Mia Thompson, Rick Jr., and Luther fit into the devil's plan? Wondering who may be the devil between Richard, Rick, and Luther. Peter comes up to him asking if he has even slept, but Wes states he only needs 1 hour given his enhancement. Also telling Peter that he feels like Batman, but not the Zack Snyder, Ben Affleck Batman, but the Scott Snyder Capullo Batman, figuring stuff out in a cave. He then asks if Commissioner Asherah is available, to which Peter then breaks the news to Wes that Commissioner Asherah unfortunately died in the bombing of the precinct. Wes then tries once again to piece everything together, especially given that tomorrow is shaping up to be the big day, wondering if Satan and the army that he has built is going to release some quantum doomsday weapon, especially with the funeral of Agur Jakar around the corner, who was a global leader that helped bring down over a dozen terrorist cells throughout the Middle East in the past decade. Leaders from all over the world will be there, wondering if Senators Black conference happening at the same time has any correlation and if it's planned as a way to throw them off. To be safe, Peter plans to send a team on the ground to the event. Wes states he still has to process all the information and will decide where to be in the morning. He then asks how are the girls, to which Peter tells him they are doing good and he should check up on Suzanne Lee as she wants to see him. So he heads to the medical unit of the HQ to check up on her, and she thanks him for saving her life twice and tells him he's quite handsome under the mask. And Wes formally introduces himself and states that the mask is part of the Alpha suit. It helps him against hexed weapons and spiritual warfare. Susanna then asks the question I have been thinking about since the last issue: what happened to the good old-fashioned faith, armor of God, Ephesians? Chapter 6, the shield of faith. I know, Wes responds. I know the whole book forwards and backwards. It's a great story. I'm just not there. Susanna offers to answer some questions if he has any, but Wes tells her he appreciates it, but he can't stay as he has to save the world and stuff. At the Broadway cemetery, Satan trapped in the immortal body thanks Sanju. I cannot pronounce that, I'm sorry. Sanju. The same raven that was on Rick Jr.'s shoulder for bringing him the key. And Sanju says Ashby's been driving us crazy for too long. It's time for you to take back your rightful place. For 40 years is long enough, my pet. It is time. And we end off this issue with a quote of 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 1. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. So with that, let's put Alfred issue 2 on our Christian fiction judgment scale. For the story, I'll give it a 4 out of 5. This issue was a wild ride and I'm all for it. The story didn't feel as plot armor heavy and predictable as issue 1. It left me dumbfounded at certain points, and I like to feel that way when I'm reading comics. The dialogue and conversations were really enjoyable and pretty interesting. There were just points where it wasn't as convincing to the situation being presented, in my opinion. Like Luther, for example. Luther was such a strong character in issue 1 to then being like dropped down to a character that just says dead meat, with dead like meat over and over. It was just like, for me personally. When it comes to artwork and creativity, it's a 5 out of 5 once again. On our art scale of comparing comic art to comic art, James is a phenomenal artist and I can't take that away from him. The continued expansion of his concept of the kingdom being this secret Christian organization keeping tabs on Satan's whereabouts is pretty unique, especially given what was revealed in this issue made the concept even more unique. But I personally need more convincing as it doesn't sit too right with me, which is why I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5 when it comes to theological basis. The apostles seemingly being resurrected after they were martyred and living 2,000 years into the future to create a high-tech Christian organization is such a unique concept that I have not come across like in anything, not even from what Marvel or DC has done, that I am afraid it is too unique for me to justify putting our stamp of approval when it comes to theological basis. I personally don't think Christian stories need biblical figures brought 2,000 years into the future into the modern era to make the story biblical or theologically sound. Even if you're playing on the whole concept of two prophets will be brought forward in the time of Revelation that most people believe will be Enoch and Elijah, just based off of stuff in the Bible. Even with that, you don't really need to play on that to really make your story biblical. I personally believe that with good Bible understanding and creativity, it is possible to make anything as insane as it sounds work well and be really entertaining once it stays within the parameters of the Bible and sound Christian theology. Now yes, you can drop the argument, well, the death of majority of the apostles is not even mentioned in the Bible. So what's the problem with this approach? And to that, I would say sound Christian scholarly sources, which James did pull from to even depict the death of Peter. Like, I honestly thought the fisherman and the name of the guy being Peter was simply just a case of homage to the Peter of the Bible in issue 1, which I liked a lot. Not that it is literally Peter who walked alongside Jesus, who was resurrected in the tomb that Jesus was placed in, along with some of the other apostles. Like, I am not a cessationist, I am a bona fide Pentecostal continuationist that believes in miracles and the whole 9 yards of spiritual gifts in modern times. But this is outside of my limit personally. Like James, I need some convincing in the comments, because when I read the panel of Peter being resurrected and being greeted by John the Apostle who had his head cut off in the tomb of Jesus Christ, I legit closed my laptop and prayed, Lord, what kind of comic is this, and is this of you? Now please don't twist what I am saying. I am not saying that James is some kind of wolves in sheep clothing. I know people like to jump to binaries and label folks as wolves and heretics. I just need some explanation on the approach, the same way Bill explained his approach to John 21:23 of having John the Apostle running around with Christian heroes in the modern age, as well as how Star-Crossed Comics approach to the Christian multiverse of biblical proportions. Something I was very, very skeptical about when I first read it, but grew to appreciate it after hearing the respective explanations. I don't feel a strong conviction towards James' approach yet, in the sense that it is not of God or it's like gone too far. I'm just not convinced and a bit concerned on the approach, especially since it is compounding with my concerns on the whole plot point about a minor demon casting a spell on the devil that stripped him of his power, and some other things that were mentioned in the comments of last video. Like, is this approach of the resurrection of the apostles a take on John 14:12, which says, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father. Because that is the only angle I see this whole storyline working out in. But I'm also thinking about Hebrews 9:27, and just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment, which to me cancels out this approach, even though there are instances in the Bible where Elisha's dead bones raised people from the dead, or Ezekiel turning a valley of bones into living, walking humans, or all the different times the apostles brought people back to life, I am all for creative takes on scriptures. My dream video game that I am literally pursuing game development academically to create is a spiritual warfare action RPG where your abilities are literally based on biblical events, spiritual gifts, and metaphorical passages in the Bible. Legit have over a 100-page Word document of a game design document about it. But I honestly think that these approaches, even mine, need thorough explanation, especially in a world where there's a lot of just saying the name of Jesus or inserting Jesus and Christians just take it and run with it, when the actual basis of it is like so far removed from what the Bible says, or like using Bible scriptures, just inserting Bible scriptures into comic panels. I got so tired of that, which is why I started covering comics from guys like James and they, rather than continue to cover Marvel comics like Immortal Hulk that had so many Bible scriptures in it that literally was twisting the Bible while using Bible scriptures. So that is just my main concern and why we even have a theological basis category in our reviews. But other than that, everything else about the comic I liked a lot, especially the convo between Troy and Wes, and the scripture usage in this issue compared to the last one did make more sense. So for the final category on my enjoyment and recommendation is a 3 out of 5. I do like the story and still recommend it, but I do need my questions cleared up to really boost this up to a 5 or anything higher than a 3. It's 3 means like it's good, it's a nice story, but do proceed with caution, especially given that this final category refers to like the conviction that runs the channel on wanting theologically sound, entertaining fiction. So maybe the questions will be answered in the next issue, or if James, if you are watching this, you can leave a comment and I will pin it and read it in issue 3's breakdown. So overall, Alpha Red issue 2 gets a 3.6 out of 5 from the explanations. Link to purchase the comic will be in the description below if you want to check it out yourself as well. If you enjoyed the video, then why not consider leaving a like on it and subscribing for more reviews and coverage of comics made by professing believers. If you enjoyed the video to the point you want to check out another one on the channel, then be sure to click the card at the top right hand corner of your screen to check out our other Alpha Red reviews if you haven't, or click this video to check out something that YouTube thinks you would like next.